welcome back to the Foxhole. As promised, this week we're going to do a double dose of AftershoX. My man, the corner, well, I should say, my man, Jim, the Kornerman, coming into the Foxhole as he does every year to give us the lowdown on what's happening in the world of motorsports, NASCAR, F1, Indy, and other things. Always fun. Known the man many years, and it's always a treat to talk to him and get his insights. You all want to be a part of the experience and have fun conversations. Drop us a line at ftinfx@gmail.com or leave us a message 525-0896. So sit back, enjoy Ken's talk with the Corner Man. Coming at you right now. AftershoX 035. All right, folks. As promised, over the last couple of weeks, the Corner Man is back in the Foxhole to give us the lowdown on auto racing. AftershoX 035 coming right at you. The Corner Man, Mr. Jim, welcome back to the Foxhole. Always a pleasure to see you on so many levels.
Well, now that we're in the 21st century with video, I can't even lie and say I've got, my helmet strapped on and everything ready to jump in the Foxhole, because you can see that I'm obviously not wearing a helmet, but I'm ready to go. I'm ready to talk racing. The racing season's on and cracking, and it's going to be a good one. I'm stoked.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. One of the things that's been so interesting for me as far as this is concerned is there's so much going on right now as far as sports go. I mean, obviously, the last 2 days have been pretty tumultuous on many levels as far as those of us who do content and that sort of thing, having stuff to talk about. I'm like, mixed in all of this, motorsports is just blowing up. And I said, okay, I can't wait to talk to Jim because I gotta get dialed up. So in that vein, let's really jump right into this. And let's start with NASCAR. I mean, it was a very tumultuous off season, right? With the Biffle and Hamlin tragedies and the lawsuit hanging over the sport. I wasn't sure what the vibe was going to be going into this season. And, from my perspective, from what I've seen, everything is really exciting. And there's not this, I don't know, pall of doom over the sport right now, and I think that's pretty cool.
That's a good point. Right now, actually in NASCAR and IndyCar, much the same way, but specifically in NASCAR, there is a spirit of moving forward. We're moving on. I mean, the lawsuit is passed. We talked about that last year. What we say, and what I said last year is it's NASCAR's game. I mean, it's billionaires fighting against 100 millionaires, and no one's gonna, they're gonna squabble it out, and they're gonna divide that big old pie a little smidgetly different, but. For the most part, now the owners have the guarantee of the charters. That's the biggest deal. That's really what the whole lawsuit was about, was being able to have permanency with their charters. You can be a chartered team owner if you're a chartered owner. That thing has value. Now, they're more like a stick and ball sport. Now, not totally, because they're not vested in with the league and with NASCAR like the team owners are in stick and ball sports. But the value of those charters automatically went up. I mean, it just has. There's 35 charters, and they are permanent now. So they have some stability, and that's really, in long and short of it, that's what the lawsuit was all about. And so NASCAR, there wasn't a finding. The courts didn't decide that. It was a settlement. NASCAR probably made the wise business decision, and they gave them their back pay basically from what they lost out on last year. Hamlin's teams and Front Row Motorsports, the other party to the lawsuit, so they get their back money, and everybody's happy. And then we go on. They've got there's some other changes going on. They've changed to the chase formula has been changed. That's big. I mean, they're going back to 2004 again. This is a big change. We've had this 3 rounds and move on and win and you're in type stuff now for quite a while. And it was cool and all for some people for a while, but most people are sick of it. And it's like, You get a guy like Connor Zilic in the Busch Series last year, excuse me, Xfinity Series, excuse me, O'Reilly's Auto Parts Series now. Last
True
year,
that.
at least we won't hear fast as it. My car was as fast as Xfinity high speed internet. We won't hear that anymore, thank God. But the 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 chase format is it's 10 races. I mean, you don't win and you're in. It's the top 16 teams, top 16 drivers in points after 26 races go, and then you got 10 races. And you know what? That's good. I mean, I think we've gone long enough now. We've gone a generation with the chase format that I think we can acknowledge that there's some value to keeping, more teams involved and more drivers involved with a chance to win the championship without making it completely illegitimate. We've had some illegitimate champions. I mean, and everybody cried about Kyle Larson winning last year. Kyle Larson was not illegitimate. Kyle Busch a decade ago was illegitimate when he missed, 10 races or whatever it was, and they gave him a pass in. That's illegitimate. But the chase format, it needed changing. This win thing, yes, winning you're in is great, but look at the crap shows we've had. People just
No doubt.
driving through people, wrecking people, doing all kinds of stuff. Winning is great. Winning should be valuable, and they did increase, the points payouts, for winning. Winning's worth more than just 40 points now. So, but it's not an automatic entry, and whether it's good or whether
These
it's
are all
bad,
good.
maybe 10 years ago we were talking the exact opposite way. But I will give NASCAR credit. They're not sitting on their laurels. They're not sitting
No,
back saying, yeah, our product's good, because you know what? It hasn't been that good. And the fans have been speaking out about it. So they're making changes. They're going to San Diego Naval Air Station this year. They're doing a points paying race at North Wilkesboro. They're taking the
this is
All-Star race to
true.
Dover. They had a fiasco with the race to begin this season, with it getting rained out, and pushed
Right.
back 3 days.
Yeah, bad weather everywhere.
But meanwhile, it was perfectly sunny in Daytona had they just stayed there. But the point being, they are trying. They have been trying, and they've been trying things for several years. Not all of them have been that good. And another thing that they've done this year, they've done some changes with the horsepower. They've bumped things up on the smaller tracks. You're going to see the cars will have more horsepower. They're trying to improve the raceability of the cars. So they're working on it. And you know what? It all adds up to, if you're a race fan, a spirit of positivity. I mean, if you're not
Okay.
positive about your favorite sport at the beginning of the season, why is it your favorite sport? You may as well find something else to do.
Fantastic, because I totally spaced, when I was putting my notes together about the changes to the format, which are huge, and really listening to the fans. Because that kind of definitely tips to, the elephant in the room as far as I'm concerned. And, most of the sports world that, for obvious reasons, have taken a fancy to NASCAR. I think the bubble got a burst with Penske winning on Sunday. But, the Jordan rules and, this whole notion that he could become the face of NASCAR and really revolutionize the sport. I know that's completely hogwash, but when you listen to the culture, the culture has been spouting all this stuff, and obviously Tyler Reddick coming out of the gate with 3 wins, and Bubba, well, the Toyotas in general, kicking ass to start the season. It's got people that don't know what the F they're talking about, talking all kinds of nonsense. So from your side of the street, what do you think about the emergence of 2311?
Well, you know what? I'll pile on to again. I'm going to point back to what we said last year. What we said last year is I expect good things out of him. I expected good things out of him last year. I expect good things out of him this year. Obviously, we're seeing good things out of him. Tyler Reddick is a proven winner. He's a 2-time Xfinity Series champion. That doesn't sound right. Busch Series champion. He's a 2-time, but with 2 different teams. He won the championship, went to another team and won the championship with them. The guy can drive. He can wheel it. He's a wheelman. Bubba Wallace is a driver. I mean, everybody. obviously there's a certain attraction that Bubba brings with him, but the point is, bottom line is, he can drive. He's legitimate. He's a legitimate Cup Series driver. He was won at all levels, and he can bring it. He can be a jerk sometimes, and guess what? So can I. And I mean, and it is what it is. A 23XI, they're 2311. Sorry.
I know, I say XI too.
And you talked about the culture and people, bringing eyeballs, or how it brings some bring eyeballs. I don't care what on ramp people take, if people want to get on that freeway and become race fans and start watching it, I'm all for it. If you're watching it because, you saw a car on a commercial that looked cool, and, whatever the case may be, I always say that, you watch what you see on TV, is great, and what you see when you go there is, you want to make a race fan out of somebody who has no race fan in them at all. Just take them to a big time race. They may not leave there following it, but I guarantee you they're gonna have a heck of a great time. There's it's a lot of fun, and right now NASCAR is they're starting to maybe kick that fun pile a little bit again, hopefully.
Oh, no doubt. And I think I guess the problem for me, and what I talked about on my platforms, is, the woke sports media, they just love to capture a moment in time, prisoner of the moment, as they say, and, run buck wild with it. And I thought the weird thing here is, because you've heard a lot of, I know I have, a lot of athletes that have been speaking up, and, yeah, man, this is, we're doing our thing. But with a lot of those guys, I get it, because they have Southern roots and actually kind of grew up watching this. It was almost the same thing when the woke sports media said, oh my God, Colorado is America's black team because I'm like going, that's not really the case. A bunch of weirdo groupies may be there. And I think the same thing with Jordan, same story, in terms of this becoming, Black America's getting ready to take over NASCAR. I'm like, settle down, folks. This is a great story, woke sports media, but let's not get carried away. And you sort of got that sense, right, with Penske winning on Sunday, where it's just like, because Monday, that's how I build all of my content. I'm like, ooh, I hear the crickets.
Back to life, back to reality. Exactly.
Back to reality.
And it's a good story, regardless of who was winning. And to win 3 in a row to start, the season is never been done. So, but we know how it goes. We've been around the block long enough to know that, if they're gonna kick whatever they can out of that story, and for as long as they possibly can, they're gonna ride it as long as they can. So.
So let me circle back on this real quick, and we'll close this loop, because I think you answered it pretty well to begin with. But I am curious, from your perspective, as somebody who actually is a fan and is extremely knowledgeable. It's weird with the showcase they give Jordan. Even to the point of, hey, it was like patting the kid's butt, and you tried to make a story out of it. Do you think there's any lingering resentment, right down there in the pit from the lawsuit, in terms of the teams and how people are interacting? I know there was another lawsuit going on with JGR and stuff like that, but I just want to get the sense: is there harmony and people getting along? And it's just like, okay, that's the lawyers dealt with this. Now it's time to race.
I think it's done. I really think it's done. The fact that, NASCAR settled this thing because they were taking a little bit of in my opinion, they were taking a public beating.
Yeah,
they were getting a black eye, and I think it's really, by the way, I think it's really rich that that there's a lot of hand-wringing going on about, by Richard Childress, because he's upset that they called him a redneck. He is a redneck. Come on. That's what, all these guys are getting upset about all the things that were being said, grow up, fellas. I think that's pretty funny. Anyway, that's a little bit of a side.
No, but that's great stuff, because that's the weird thing as far as, the culture, being fascinated with NASCAR for 3 weeks, and, people asking the question, is NASCAR going to lose its redneck roots if it goes mainstream? And it's like, hey, folks, man, NASCAR's not going mainstream in that way. obviously people, need their talking points, but I thought it was kind of interesting that you said that someone like Richard Childress would even have to defend himself in that
Yeah.
regard. It's just like, what?
I think and basically, they did their little squabble, and
Mhm.
their dirty laundry kind of got aired out a little bit. Will there be hurt feelings, and are there hurt feelings behind the scenes? Certainly. I mean, but I think that the business model that they're working on is more important to them right now than the hurt feelings. And you talked about the other lawsuit going on with JGR. That's legitimate. I mean, that's a legitimate lawsuit going on. And it's really funny. I was just wondering, how in the heck did crappy old Spire Motorsports all of a sudden get really good? You know what? Son of a gun. Now we know.
Oh dear,
But
dear, dear.
yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it's I think it's okay. I mean, I'm obviously I'm not there on a weekly basis, but there's you don't hear talk about the lawsuit. You don't hear talk about that lawsuit. They're done with that. That's it. They're moving on. So
Okay,
we're
okay.
racing. So that's the way I'm going to paint it. That's my story. I'm sticking to it, Ken.
I like it. I like it. Okay, so we are racing, and as I was saying earlier, obviously the Toyotas were looking pretty good, out the gate. So let's talk about on the track. What are you seeing as far as, obviously it's a long grind ahead, but so what do you see in front of us with all of these automakers?
Really interesting dichotomy this year, because we're going back to, again, we talked about with the points format, we're going back to, it's not a win and you're in situation. So you're going, you can't, you had people driving in a way that they wouldn't have been driving. They would take chances to go for wins, you know, that they wouldn't have been doing. And once they got a win in those first 26 races, their whole season approach is different. The change in how you have to approach the way you're going about your business couldn't be any bigger, in terms
Mhm.
of shifting it from the point situation. They're back to, yes, points racing. It was a good points day, and I know we all said we hated the fact that guys at points race. They're going to have to points race now. We're only, what, 4 races in out of 26, so I wouldn't read anything right now into somebody who is behind the 8 ball per se, because they have 22 more races, and all you got to do is get in the top 16. So I mean, you can, in 2 races you can go from 25th to 8th. This early in the season. I mean, so there's no, it's not a real worry. However, you can see, the people that are strong, the drivers that are strong early on, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be strong all the way through. What I liked about Kyle Larson last year is he was strong early and then he was strong late, and he got a little bit lucky also. But these guys, I think Tyler Reddick. I mean, I'm not going to say yes, he's the favorite, because everybody wants to jump on and say he's a favorite because he won the first 3 races. But I do think you're going to see a lot of him all year long. I think he's going to be I think he's a legitimate title contender because he has the experience in winning NASCAR National Series titles. He's got 2 of them at the Busch Series level. He knows he's a winner. He's a champion, so he's going to be a threat. The cars are strong. Toyotas are strong. Denny Hamlin's building a good team. They got a good organization. They're probably better than Gibbs is right now.
Right, and the
You
Gibbs,
know,
they're not too far behind of the pack as well. Like I said, when I look at Toyota, I'm looking at both of those in the races that I'm seeing in terms of consistency. And I don't want to take too much of a sample size after 4 races, but I kind of wonder, what do they know about the setup early that others may not know?
well, there are a couple of there are some new names and there are some old names that I'm really
Okay.
intrigued by this year, and I'm going to bring up the name that, well, every year there's always somebody. It was Ross Chastain before, and now it's it's Carson Hocevar. Carson Hocevar. People love to hate Carson Hocevar. I love Carson Hocevar. That guy will
Interesting.
he you know I like any guy who's going to go out there and put his ass on the line. Pardon my French. Put it on the line and try and win. Does he run into people sometimes? Yeah, he does. How many million times I've said it, and I'll say it again. People hated Dale Earnhardt. I mean, Dale Earnhardt is loved and beloved in the sainthood. Yeah, now, but back then when he was doing it, they didn't love him.
Yeah, when he was driving
No,
the yellow
no,
and blue Wrangler, it was a
I'm certainly not calling
basket.
Carson Hocevar Dale Earnhardt. I'm certainly not calling Ross Chastain Dale Earnhardt. But those guys. They're aggressive. They want to win and inspire. However, they got there are showing they got three guys up running in the top 10, top 12. And they're running strong. They're looking good. Hocevar's a good driver. Um, you know, uh, and the new old guys. I'm looking at the Fords and the Roush Keselowski guys. I expect to see one of those guys, one of those drivers, win a race for Roush Keselowski this year. Whether it's Brad, whether it's the 17 car, I don't think their third car will win, but you never know. I mean, they're running better. There's it's not the same old guys all together anymore. The mix for 10 through 16, 8 through 16 is really big. Hendrick doesn't seem to be as deep. Although, Larson will be there in the end. Elliott will be there in the end. Alex Bowman's hurt, so he's not going to be there in the end. Uh, William Byron will be there in the end. They'll be there. I mean, the same,
Okay.
those guys, the Hendricks will be there, but and the Gibbs guys will be there. But you're going to see 3 or 4 guys, challenging for that top 16 in points that are new, that are fresh, that are new, that aren't common names, that the Bushers and the Kosovars and guys like that. Chastain, yeah, we know Chastain a little bit, but Bubba Wallace, I mean, he will be a legitimate threat to be, a solid, to make the chase. He's going to make the chase. In all likelihood, I'm not going to guarantee it, but there's going to be a lot of fresh names that we're going to see up there challenging.
Oh, heaven
It's kind of
forbid that should happen. And it's going to. I know it is, but it's so funny because he's the culture's driver, which shows you how much they're really paying attention. If they do what pain in the ass he is, it's just like, oh, I'm not sure I'm down with this brother.
Yeah, well, he's a big goofy guy,
Yes,
and and sometimes you have to lean into everything, but he's got a good social media presence and he does fun stuff and he's talented. Look, the bottom line is he's a talented race car driver, and
no doubt.
people want to talk him down and badmouth him and say, well, he hasn't won anything yet. Well, he hasn't won the cup level, yeah, but he's he's in his second year and come on, let's be honest. Spire wasn't that good last year, and they're not that much better this year. Well, they're better, but he's just an exciting young driver, and he's going to rub people the wrong way, and whether you love him or hate him, NASCAR needs to have people like that. You got to have Carson Hocevars. You got to have Ross Chastains because there's too many Chase Elliott's, man.
Okay, exactly. So let me flip it this way.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot in the past about the image problem, right? And it's something I always bring up, and it's fascinating. Every year, I think it gets more nuanced. And I like what you brought up about some of these guys that got a little more rough and tumble, right? In terms of almost old NASCAR, as opposed to these social media guys like a Bubba, and all these guys that are on the Netflix series and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's room for both. Is what I'm saying. And I think it's interesting because, when people try to assert, yeah, these guys are too social media conscious, and I'm like, no, there's still some guys out there that will punch you in the mouth.
There are, and when we talk about the real characters and the real flavor of NASCAR, I think it's important to look down series a little bit too, and you go down to the lower series where you've got some real character. You got like you talked about willingness, like Austin Hill. Austin Hill's like 6'3", 230. I mean, he decks some dude in the pit, right? He's a big dude. I mean, and you know what? He's aggressive. I mean, he's got a little bit of red in him. There's some. There's Daniel Suarez, a driver from Mexico, who's in the Cup Series. He's got a little bit of edge to him. I mean, there's some guys that can be pretty edgy. And That's what, and NASCAR. I mean, the one of the reasons that I think the Cup Series is there's a new feeling in it, you know, and with the lawsuit ending and kind of just trying to move forward. Is there's some really good, compelling stuff going on in the Busch series. I'm just going to call it the Busch series. In the Busch series and the Truck series, there's some good drivers down there that are making some good stories, and some really good racing's been going on this year in the lower levels. So just a lot of good positive feelings about NASCAR. A lot better than in the last few years for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the future's endless. Didn't I just see in the past week that Toyota signed Harvick's 13-year-old son to a developmental deal or something like that? Just like,
Well, yeah, and well, then Kyle Busch's son's like 10. I mean, Uh, he's running in Madera Speedway. Am I all in the 209? Oh, actually, the Madera's in the 559 now, but he's running the 8 race junior late
no
model
kidding.
series that and Madera Speedway. Kenny Shepard's an old NASCAR. He was a West Coast
Yeah, I
driver.
remember Kenny
Yeah,
Shepard
Kenny
totally.
Shepard. He's run the Madera Speedway for a number of years now, and
I
they've
didn't
got a
know that.
big.
Wow.
They've got a junior late model program, a series they've got that airs on what was called the speed. It's basically it's Mad TV. It's the
Hmm.
racerchannel.com racer channel now. If you get on the under satellite provider, um, it's 8 race series that he's going to be Bush. I can't remember Brexton Bush. He's 10, and this series is for 10 through 16 year olds,
Really?
and a guy who ran it and won it was the guy by the name of Jesse Love, who won the Xfinity series
Hey,
last
I know what
year. You
Jesse
know,
loves. Oh, that's
Je-
funny.
Je- Jesse Love. He's from Northern California. He's from the Bay Area, Palo
Okay.
Alto. And, his family has money and he raced cars and he was a 14, 15-year-old kid, 16-year-old kid, raced at the Madera Speedway at Kenny Shepard's Junior Late Model Series. Look at him now. He's one step away from the Cup Series and he's a NASCAR national champion. So there's some guys that run there that started running there. Now Brexton Bush is going to run in Madera. And I almost was planning on going, but I'm going to be busy Saturday night. But
Okay.
I'm going to check it out. I will be checking it out and seeing Bush running a 10-year-old kid running on a third mile paved oval.
Well, you're definitely going to have to fill me in when it
I
comes to
will.
that.
I
Yeah,
will.
that sounds so
I will get
cool.
you some footage for that one, man.
Oh, please do. That's funny because before we flip to the next heading, I gotta ask this for sentimental purposes. When you brought up Bush, and I know this being the 25th anniversary, there's all kinds of documentaries to get us all teary and all that kind of stuff. I remember, my brother who, obviously passed away last year, and what a insane Dale Earnhardt fan he was. And I remember when Dale won Daytona, I got thinking about the whole thing that Kyle Busch has been going through, trying to get that on his resume. Do you think he ever will win it, or will he be one of those guys that does not get it done in the Great American Race?
I mean, it's 50-50.
Okay, I like that.
So,
Then he's
you
got a
know,
puncher's chance. Then
you know what? I'm going to say yeah, because he almost won this year,
this is true.
and really he's had several really good chances that he's had taken away from him by no fault of his own. He's he's made several mistakes in restrictor plate races. So another guy who's made plenty of mistakes in restrictor plate races is Denny Hamlin. That guy's caused a jillion wrecks, but man, the dude still won 3 or 4 Daytona 500s. But Bush is just not, I think he will. And the funny thing about Kyle Busch, I'm you might disagree with me, but I think that he's turned the corner with the fans.
Oh,
They
I
cheer
agree.
him
I
now.
agree 2,000%.
And
Even his wife seems nicer and actually tolerable.
I wouldn't go that far. No, I'm just kidding. He when he won the truck race at Atlanta earlier this year, he got out and they were cheering him. I mean, it was big time cheering. They were absolutely cheering him. He's they like him now, and it's the weirdest thing. I just think it's kind of funny because I mean he was public enemy number one, and he's still not exactly, people aren't totally warm and fuzzy, but definitely, I mean, it's like Waltrip. It was the same way. People hated Darrell Waltrip, and late in his career,
Jaws.
they started loving Darrell
Yeah, he
Waltrip.
became one of the. I miss Jaws.
Uh,
Right, as
well,
far as he got too
yeah,
old.
and they loved him when he did the Icky Shuffle when he won the Daytona
Right.
500, and
Boogity,
they
boogity,
loved him,
boogity, whatever he used to say.
yeah, but yeah, I could have lived without that. But
Yeah, I could too. I mean, all kinds of
this
cheese
thing,
when it came to him, but he became a very
there,
beloved character after years when he wasn't so loved. Which is, as
there's
you
only
say,
one
it's
driver. There's only one driver who I don't think is going to get that. I don't think he's
who
going to
dat.
get that. I don't think I think it's Denny Hamlin. I don't think
Okay,
Hamlin's going to get that. And basically just he's a complete dick. And people don't like him. And yeah, he tells it like it is, so to speak. And he has this podcast occasionally that I've never watched and read excerpts of or seen clips of, and he's an owner and he's in there and yeah, he's talented and all that, but just we have this conversation every year. Just go back and look at the interviews. Just go back and look at the bad mouths his competitors for doing exactly what he does. I mean, he's just a dick, and people don't like him. And people, the big thing last year about how it was so bad for Denny, and they felt so bad, that the fact that they threw the caution, late in the last race, and he lost out in a chance. Number one, Kyle Larson had a better season than Hamlin did, hands down. Hands down, had a better season. So Denny Hamlin didn't get anything robbed from him. Number two, ever heard of Carl Edwards? Carl Edwards, if anybody got robbed,
King
it was
Carl.
Carl Edwards, and when they threw the caution on him, and that was a phantom caution, and look what happened. Denny Hamlin, there was a caution came out. He was dominating the race. Yes, he was. And then guess what? The Dunderhead went in and changed 4 tires. It's his fault. Idiot. He should have stayed out on the track, and guess what? He didn't win. So, and there is a certain element who will talk about how, they feel bad for Denny Hamlin. I guarantee you the other 98% of us are laughing our asses off because we don't like Denny Hamlin. People don't like Denny Hamlin.
Yeah,
He's
right.
universally as disliked as any driver out there. You can feel free to email me your complaints and your disagreements with me, but
There's several
you know
points
what?
of
I don't
that.
think I'm wrong. I think I'm absolutely right that he's the least
Yeah,
favorite driver. He's even more disliked than Bubba Wallace, which is
no
hard to
doubt.
believe.
And it's weird, right? Because one, because that's I mean, there's some things to unpack here. One, if we could ever get to the Holy Grail, B, all the things you say, and then the weird thing about what happened to him at the end of the year, where you for a second, obviously the NASCAR family rallied along with the Biffle tragedy we talked about in the beginning. There was like kind of a moment where we kind of humanized him, and then we get back to Denny being Denny. I just go, wow, man, that you flushed that goodwill, and because I mean, when he felt for you, rightfully so, with what he went through. But I just laugh when you say that. I shouldn't be laughing because it's really fucked up what happened. But it's just like, yeah, dude, you still have so much ill will that even a human tragedy like that isn't going to turn people around and get you on your side.
No, everybody loses people. I
No
feel
doubt.
bad for Denny. But that's not going to change. The fact that he's since 2007 has been bad mouthing his fellow opponents after he wrecks them and calls them amateurs and just acts like a jerk. And he's earned it. It's a well earned title that he holds. It's well earned. So and
The
I'd be glad
Kornerman
to
has
say.
spoke. Oh my
There you go.
goodness. Okay. So we're gonna take a quick break, and then we're gonna like re-rack, and we're gonna go with some F1. So let's take momentarily. We'll be back in a second. Okay, welcome back to the Foxhole. We're cooking. It may not be like McDonald's, whatever the big arch is, but we're making something good in the kitchen right now. Kicking it with my great friend for good grief, like I don't think it's like 4.5 decades now, or maybe even more at this point. The Kornerman, Mr. Jim. All right, let's move to the F1 story. And I'm going to start off with a softball.
Hmm.
What is your temperature with the circuit's move to Apple TV?
It absolutely ice cold. They don't have the typical ratings numbers, so there's no empirical data to support
Mhm.
this, but there is the very strongly held belief that a good 50 to 75% drop off in U.S. television, in U.S. viewership for Apple TV. And, let's face it, Apple TV is not a widely held platform. People, I don't subscribe to it. And I'm not going to subscribe to it just to watch Formula One. I mean, it's a head scratcher. It's a long game. They're playing a long game here, but Formula One, was really captivating the American audiences and kept grabbing a lot of momentum, and they really just handed that momentum off to IndyCar and NASCAR. They just handed it back to the American forms of auto racing that we can see here in America. And, we can actually watch it. I mean, uh,
Okay.
There aren't enough people that have Apple TV, and there aren't enough people who are going to get it just to watch Formula One.
To that point, okay, because you know eh, they got really ambitious when they inquired MLS. And to be fair, MLS was really being treated like a stepchild by FS1 and ESPN. But it's been a disaster in terms of that MLS had a lot of momentum and was really growing. But now the casual, to the same point of F1, isn't going to get Apple TV to watch domestic soccer. It's just not going to happen. And it hasn't happened. Even though I do think the production value was pretty good, it's still not attracting the casuals and the people in the local markets. And so I'm just hearing you say that about when that's really alarming because you're the first person I've really had a chance to ask the question like, damn, what if somebody really gives a shit about this? Think about this move. Pardon my language.
Yeah, well, you know what, and that's the truth. I don't watch Formula One racing anymore. I will go back and find the video of it after the fact and watch parts of it, and read multiple sources about what happened and watch interviews and things and go back and watch the clips that match up with the things that I read about. But I will no longer be tuning in from start to finish to the telecast of the Formula One race because I don't have Apple TV and I'm not getting it. It's as
Wow.
simple as that. So, you know, I like I said, they're playing a long game, and it may be to their advantage in the long run. It may be, far be it from me to say it's not, but I sure don't think it's to their advantage in the short run.
F
Not in the slightest, because they're
what I've
losing
seen on the MLS
viewers.
experience, I'm going to
Uh,
say I agree with you 8,000%.
uh, and I can talk about the fantastic Australian Open or Australian Grand Prix. George Russell and Antonelli with the Mercedes 1-2. Ferrari was the 3-4. And I
Okay. So
watched
you're
and I
surprised by that result.
and a little bit, and I watched the clips, but I didn't sit there and put it on the DVR like I do all my other races. I watch it from start to finish and back, and go back and forth and watch stuff and really consume it. I just surfaced it, after the fact because I'm not going to get Apple TV and they're going to lose viewers. It's that simple. Was I surprised by it? Yes, no, maybe so. I mean, a lot of times coming into the season, you have a good idea about who's going to be good and who's not going to be good. Mercedes was thought to after preseason testing. It was thought to have been pretty good, but you never really know, because there's a lot of sandbagging going on there.
Hmm.
You can tell who's not going to be good more than you can tell who's going to be good. Um, Expected Ferrari to be a little bit better, expected Red Bull to be a little bit worse, and didn't really expect McLaren to be top of the world. I don't really think they were real world beaters either. It's a really reminiscent of that small period of time like 2008, 2009, between the fading out of Ferrari and the rise of Red Bull, and
Hmm.
we've had, and since that time it's been all Red Bull on top, then all Mercedes on top, then all Red Bull on top again. And now we're kind of back into this little period where there's, we're going to have, there's some competition. We are looking at, we're blessed with a real era in the last 2 or 3 years of in Formula One of opening up and really being competitive. You can't say that this team or that team is the dominant team. Certainly not all season long, because different teams do better on different types of tracks, and I expect Mercedes is going to be probably pretty tough this year. I think Ferrari will be improved, but it's wide open. It
Well, let
really
me
is
ask
wide
you this
open.
then, because it being wide open, and maybe this is something, obviously, like I was saying earlier, there's so many different streams of content when it comes to doing a doing a sports podcast, and kind of priding yourself on, hey, I try to cover everything and talk about it, or try to be, semi knowledgeable. Um, but it's hard to follow everything. And what I guess long winded, what is your take on what I'm hearing are the new regulations that some have said scramble the field, or others that say it's level the playing field? Tell me about this.
That's the $64,000 question right there. That's the biggest thing right now with Formula One is the new regulations, and what makes it scrambling the field is how badly they screwed it up. I mean,
Oh, shit.
they the rollout of, basically, in a nutshell, without being real technical,
Hmm.
it's they harvest a lot of energy in Formula One cars, and they harvest the energy from the braking, and it's kinetic energy, and it's harvested and stored, and they can use it. And that's how it had been, in their hybrid systems that they've had. Well, they still have the hybrid system. But they've changed the format of, you have the split between how much of your power you can get from your internal combustion engine and how much you can get from your electrical output. And they've also taken out the Harvey, the 80 and the MGU component, the MGUH, which was what it was that harvested the brake energy. So they have to use more of this internal or electrical power, but they have a harder there's less of it to be able to use. So what's happened is basically they're having to coast. They were having the cars were having to drive slower in order to make their power last. I mean, what Formula One's turning into, it's a video game. I mean, Nicky Lauda won the championship using the gas pedal, the brake, the clutch, and the steering wheel. And now they have, a whole series of you have to harvest your energy. You have to, regulate how much your of the power you're letting out from your harvesting, and balance it with what you're using on your actual engine. Um,
That's
it's not
fascinating.
driving. It's not driving. It's an exercise in technology, and so as to who's going to be the best at it this year, it's the first year with the regulations, and they're already reworking things. So the bottom line is, I'm going to say Mercedes is going to look pretty good, because the feeling has been that they were they were best at coming to grips with the new regulations. And it doesn't surprise me, because when they had the big regulation changes in 2014, they were far and away the best at it. I mean, that's of course Hamilton won 6 titles in 7 years, and so
That's
we're
fascinating.
we're not really going to be able to. We have to wait and see what kind of changes they're going to, what tweaks they're going to make in order to be able to actually drive and actually race, lift and coast. And I mean, IndyCar does a lot of lift and coasting for fuel saving, but Formula One is not supposed to lift and coast. I mean, and they're doing it for not for fuel, but for energy. I mean, and that's just silly. I mean,
Well,
that
I think
doesn't make
it's
much
so
sense.
wild that when you bring up the video game analogy, and a lot of this stuff is over my head because I can only follow so much stuff, but I'm hearing them like the turbo boost and how you have to like regenerate. It's like that is a video game or gun. They have to like go to the coal mine to get more ammo to keep fighting. And
Mhm.
I'm like,
That's it.
God, it just
You know, they it's just that they should be. I mean, the cars are faster now than they were back in the day. Like the times that when you saw Senna, wrestling that beast, around Monaco, and they're infinitely faster now. I mean, they're way faster. They're way bigger, and the cars are bigger and they're heavier and way more powerful. They make way more power, but they race like dogs, and they're not very. And with these new regulations right now, they don't have it. They rolled out one set of regulations without having the other set ready for it. That was basically, in a nutshell, what happened. They didn't correlate the engine and chassis back together quite right, and so it's made for these problems, and they're going to figure it out. But hopefully, they're going to
okay.
figure it out. But in the meantime, what it's going to do is it's going to scramble up the top of the field for a while. You've got guys like Isaac Hadger and the other Red Bull who was very competitive. I mean, look at the Haas cars were kind of competitive. I mean, you're gonna, heck, you had seven teams score points in the 7 of the 11 teams scored points in the opening race. So when you can get that many teams scoring points, I think it's okay. They're doing a good job. It's not the same 3 or 4 teams over and over and over and over
Okay.
again.
Along those lines, as they say, it's heavy for who wears the crown, right? And I was sitting there thinking, because that's why I wanted to ask you about this, because you obviously can only take so much out of one race, right? Just like the same as we were talking about NASCAR, 4 races. But that said, the big question is when you're putting this together, it's like, can Norris keep his, place on the top of the summit? Or did Mad Max, who finished very strong last year, and I thought was going to run him down, was that kind of like a harbinger of things to come? Or what you just said, those everything up in the air, and it may not be either one of those guys.
Well, Verstappen's the best driver in the world.
Oh, totally.
He can wrestle a car. That Red Bull last year was not an overly competitive car, and he almost took it
Mhm.
to the championship. Clearly, the McLaren was better last year. It shows how many mistakes Norris made just to keep that thing close. I'll put it to you this way: every decade or so in Formula One, you get a Lando Norris. A decade ago, you got um, uh, uh, or 2 decades ago, you got Raikkonen. Raikkonen won a title for Ferrari. Then a decade ago there was now his name is Nico Rosberg. Yeah, Nico Rosberg won it. Every decade or so, there's a random Formula One guy wins the title. Well, now you got your Lando Norris. Um, will he ever win another one? Maybe. Is he a world caliber driver? Sure. Is he a champion, world class Formula One world beater? Nah, he's all right. He's a
Okay.
decent driver, but he um got lucky in that last year
I
Red
thought
Bull
so.
the Red Bull went into the toilet because Adrian Newey left and that car was a dog, and so Verstappen still almost won the championship. Ferrari was Ferrari. They weren't really there competitive. Mercedes was Mercedes. The Mercedes was not on not at the top competitive. So clearly the McLaren was a better car last year, and Norris did his best to not win the championship and managed to win it. Is he going to win the championship this year? I'd bet you $1 million if I had it that he wouldn't. It's not going to win the championship, but you know,
Damn.
um,
Mattress Mac, are you listening?
yeah, well, I shouldn't talk like that because I did the math the other day, and if I had done too little investments a couple of years ago, I would have been rich. But I didn't do it, so I shouldn't talk about money. But no,
Likewise.
I don't think that Lando Norris is going to win the championship. I don't think McLaren is the best car right now. And there's a certain, yeah, it was Isaac Hadger, as a matter of fact, last year crashed on the way to the on the parade lap, on the pace lap before the first race last year for the Racing Bulls team, and Oscar Piastri in his home Grand Prix in the opening race of the year this year
Mr. Piastri.
crashes on the, I'm Scott McLaughlin crashed last year on the pace lap at the Indy 500. I mean, that's the weirdest thing. I don't ever remember anybody ever crashing on a pace lap, but from back in the day. It's happened like 4 times in the last couple of years. But um,
That is
I
crazy.
think I
Now
think
thinking
that's
about it.
I don't sense
Crushed on the
McLaren. I
pace flip.
mean,
Hell.
yeah, I don't sense McLaren being that tough. Again, it's one race in, but they haven't. It's wide open. And it
Oh,
is
sure.
wide open. McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, even Red Bull. Don't count Red Bull out. Any driver almost on any of those four teams, is a legitimate title contender. Maybe not all 8 of them, but maybe 6 of the 8 of them are any one of those drivers can win the championship. I wouldn't be surprised,
Well, let
except for
me
maybe
ask this then. Along those lines, this is where, we're speaking about Mad Max. And this is what me basically kind of trying to get some insights. And I know he talks a lot of trash and complains a lot. But I'm kind of wondering, this off season, he seemed to be a little bit more outspoken. And I guess I want to know if some of his complaints about the circuit are legitimate, or is he just being a prima donna?
yeah, there's some of the things that he said. There's some truth to it.
Okay.
He also is not in the dominant car. And that can alter your perspective quite a bit, and Formula One drivers seem to tend to be a complaining bit, to begin with. I mean, things have to be just precise and delicate and just so, otherwise, there seems to be problems. But but Verstappen is the best driver in the world, and yes, he won a million races with the best car, but what he's shown is how competitive he has been when he hasn't had the best car. Before he, the last couple of years of Mercedes dominance, he was still winning 2 or 3 races a year. He was winning. He was winning. He wasn't winning 15 races a year, but he was winning. And there were years where that Mercedes, man, they could have driven that thing in reverse and won almost
True,
all the
true, true,
races.
true.
They were so far ahead of everybody. Their second place driver could have driven in reverse. I mean, Bottas was and Nico Rosberg won a champ. They were just so good. That car was
What a
so
championship?
competitive.
Got a couple
It-
of Heineken
yeah,
commercials out
but
of it with his dad.
exactly. But even while they were doing that in 1918, 19, Verstappen was winning races and being competitive. And then, he gets in the car that wasn't the best car when he won his first championship. That that controversial championship when he topped Hamilton there at the end. The Mercedes was clearly the better car, clearly the better car, but Verstappen won the championship. And even the next year, I mean, then they were starting to get the real good car. Then the last, but his last title that Verstappen won, 2024, second half of the year, they were clearly not the best car anymore. McLaren had the best car, and yet Verstappen still, he didn't score the most points over the second half of the season, but he was one of the top scorers, and he won the championship because he's the best driver. He got the most out of his car. And last year's a great example. That car was good, and then it wasn't good, and then it was good, and then it wasn't good. And McLaren was just a little more consistent all year long, but yet Verstappen still, he brought that thing up there. He's got
Oh,
company though.
absolutely. I mean, I
Yeah.
thought, in the final third of the season, I thought he was going to run Norris down, and that's why I was asking. This is a harbinger of things to come in terms of like, okay, you've had your fun. Now I'm
But
here to reclaim.
North is not going to maintain that spot, but I don't think it's going to be because of Verstappen. If I was going to bet on anybody else, actually, really, I don't. I said I bet $1 million that Norris wasn't going to win the championship, but I wouldn't bet anything on Formula One right now. It's so open, and until they get to grips with these regulations and try
Mhm.
and make some adjustments because they're having a hard time driving their cars. Not like Aston Martin can't drive their cars, but I mean, they're for different reasons. But boy, I'd hate to
So
be an Aston Martin right now.
yeah, so I mean, okay, let me talk to me about that before I have my next question. Yeah, because I've been hearing a lot about them and Cadillac having problems too, right?
Yeah, well, Aston Martin basically they just have a crappy car. That's low car syndrome, but it's they have a new Honda. They're with Honda now, and Honda's getting back into it, and their power unit is causing it's just they're new and the car's shaking, it's vibrating so bad that they can't drive it. Literally can't drive fast. They have to slow down. They can't drive it. So,
Are you
um,
serious that
yeah,
it vibrates
it's
that much and it's undrivable?
they have from the very beginning of testing. It carried through. They were not even thinking they were going to be able to run the whole race in Australia, because it's just the drivers are actually complaining about worried about brain damage. That's how bad it's gotten. They're actually now they I
Dude, that sounds so
or
insane.
nerve, excuse me, nerve damage, not brain damage, nerve
I
damage.
have
But
not heard anything about that. I heard about the Niners conspiracy of things causing their
yeah.
injuries, but this tops that one. What the
Yeah.
hell?
Well, it's because it's vibrating. The car is vibrating so bad. They're worried about their hands and nerve damage and stuff like that. Because if they drive
I,
more than like
I
twenty
can
five
totally
laps or
see.
something like that, yeah, it's crazy. And again, they'll come to grips with it. They got Adrian Newey, who is the Red Bull, came over from Red Bull, and he's it's an Adrian Newey design. So you got to trust Adrian Newey. He's one of the best there is. So hopefully they'll get a grips on it. But between that and Honda's last venture in Formula One wasn't very smooth either. So yeah, we'll see
Okay.
how that goes. We'll see how it goes with Aston.
Wow, that is crazy.
Oh,
Okay, let
but
me
but
ask you
Cadillac,
this.
yeah,
Go ahead.
Cadillac's just a lead sled. I mean, they're a new car. They're just slow. I mean, they're a bad car. They're it's to be expected. You kind of hope they'd be a little more competitive. I want to see them being a little more competitive. I mean, Haas
No doubt,
when
no
they
doubt.
started a decade ago, they came out of the boat or they came out pretty quick. They scored points in their first outing. They did okay, and they didn't finish bottom of the barrel right away. But this Cadillac, the only thing that keeping Cadillac from being the worst out there is Aston Martin because yeah, and they're really bad. They're way behind, so they need to pick it up a little bit.
Okay, so it's funny because a little while back, early on in the season one, they had this marketing guy on. Well, he's kind of marketing, but he does a lot of analytics. And we were talking. Yeah, he was talking motorsports as well. He's a smart guy, but when it comes to analytics, I can only take so much of it. But we were talking racing, and of course, he had to ask me the stupid question. He's like, "Oh, I bet you I know who your favorite F1 driver is." Which he was stunned when I said Mad Max because he figured because I'm a brother that I'd have to be about Lewis Hamilton. I'm just like, gotcha, bitch.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, oh, well, I would have thought you were a Lewis Hamilton kind of guy. And I'm like, well, hey, I like Lewis Hamilton, but I like Mad Max a little more.
So,
That said, Lewis Hamilton having what was it, a third or a fourth last weekend? Is it third or fourth?
he's fourth.
Fourth. An impressive start for him because I know he did a lot of soul searching over the winter and a lot of mea culpas. How are you feeling about his renaissance possibly in 2026?
Well, if he could finish top five in points, I mean, I know Ferrari wants more. I know Lewis wants more. I think you kind of get he suffers from his past success.
Totally.
But when you set a standard of winning all those championships, anything less looks bad. And Formula One is so much car, so much of it is car. It's what makes what Verstappen does, impressive. Because what he's done when he hasn't had the best car. Hamilton, when he's had the best car, has been dominant. But when he hasn't had the best car, has been something of a prima donna. And I kind of he kind of looks like, given the vibe that I get from him this year, he's kind of like the late career Renaissance type thing, where I kind of see a more appreciative. I don't know. That's something about the interviews I watched of him, and hearing him
Oh,
talk.
totally. I
I mean,
agree.
I kind of get. I sort of just feel like he kind of sees that maybe the end is out there, and and that it's maybe he's not winning every race right now, but there's an appreciativeness about him that I don't think I've seen before quite
Okay,
like
because
this.
I know, I know people were about the one of my other friends that I talked racing with got mad at me, and I said, the parallel for me with Lewis Hamilton is he's kind of like LeBron of motorsports in that sense of kind of Lewis Hamilton more dominant, I think, in terms of winning, but at the same time, like being at the top of your game, still being good enough, kind of in your 40s but as you said, kind of have the difference being Lewis Hamilton has perspective, LeBron never will. But I just, in terms of their greatness, I just see a little bit of a parallel between those
Yeah,
two on the back
yeah,
end of their careers.
yeah. Like you can sort of write your ticket for however long you want to write it, and they're kind of in that stage right now. They're and truth be told, when we we were growing up, guys, you move everything up a decade, guys are 43, 44 now. We'd be talking about guys like this when they were 34, 35,
Oh, no doubt.
36, you know,
43,
and
44, you'd be so
yeah.
long in the tooth it'd be embarrassing.
So yeah, to see them, doing what they're doing is, it's kind of surprising. I mean, I'm, the hand-eye coordination that it takes to be a top level race car driver is really,
Truly.
really not really understood. The type of spatial awareness and spatial coordination and depth perception that you have to have and to be a top level, because it's very precise. Those guys that people don't understand sometimes that when they're hauling through, threading their way through the little curves at 145, 150, 155 miles an hour, an inch from the wall, in order to get the best angle, to get the extra, tenth of a second, 5/100ths of a second that they need, the precision that it requires is remarkable. And people look at it on TV and they're it's just a car driving around. No, it's not. I mean, the nature of the focus and the concentration and the sense that goes from the spatial awareness into your hands and your feet, from seat of your pants to maneuver that vehicle through those in the way you need to do it. You start losing that stuff, that stuff goes away.
Truly.
It's like it's like anything else. But I think you can maintain it longer than you can the ability to run and jump. So I think
Absolutely.
we'll see guys like Lewis Hamilton. We'll see guys be able to race up into their 40s. Earnhardt was well into his 40s, almost 50. We'll see guys, Foyt race well into his 50s, Andretti race into his
Absolutely.
50s.
And
I
you
think the
can't be
ability to
lost
do it is
on,
there. Yeah, I think
yeah,
with the amount of money they can make, that probably the desire to race that long probably won't be there.
for
But you look
sure.
at a
I'm
guy
going
like
to
Scott
say that
Dixon
the
that's in his 40s, so
right, the
you
training
know,
regimen now, and having personal trainers,
uh,
not eating ribs and fried chicken and all kinds of
yeah,
the other good stuff they have down in that world.
yeah, but they
You're
have
actually
about
taking care of
2% body
yourselves.
fat. Yeah, yeah, and they do. I mean, they're fit. They and IndyCar drivers are fit, and they're remarkably fit. IndyCar and Formula One drivers are just amazing.
Okay, so before we jump into Indy and start winding this thing down, I gotta ask this to close this segment out. Kind of talked about the usual suspects. Who do we need to be keeping an eye on, or are there some plot lines that we should be keeping an eye on as far as the friends of the Foxhole are concerned?
Well, in Formula One, if you want to have
Yeah, Formula One. Yeah, exactly.
if
Just that.
if you want to get a storyline to follow, just to kind of a surprise, keep an eye on Isaac Hadjar, the Red Bull number 2 driver. That is a notoriously bad seat. They go through dry,
Okay,
as
so
you
what's his
the,
backstory, or like just a
well,
quick little
well,
flash?
he's young. He's in his second year. He's brought up. He started last year on the Red Bull Junior team, so he was on the Racing Bulls team last year. Of course, Red Bull they turn over that second seat. It is a tough seat because Max makes you look really bad.
Yes, he does.
And so you're number 2. I mean, he's gone through, I think, what, 5 number 2s in 5 or 6 years. So they
Ball
they
don't
they
lie.
that they need to be competitive. They need to, and the car is absolutely not set up for you. The car is 100% set up the way Max Verstappen likes it. That's the thing. It's kind of thought that Hadjar can drive it the way Max can drive it. So maybe that he won't have quite such a hard time adjusting, to somebody else's car, because that's basically what the Red Bull does. And he's been, the Red Bull is not the dominant car. There's maybe the fourth best car, third or fourth best car, but he's clearly been showing himself capable. And I think there's not enough turnover in the line and down through the field, and I don't think there's nothing from last year that's going to jump out. Like there's nobody who sucked last year who's not going to suck this year. Put it that way. Um, the 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 Audi, what was called the Sauber team before, they look to be maybe a little bit better. They got some factory. It's a factory squad now. They're an Audi squad. So, um, but if I was going to pick one driver who you haven't ever heard of in Formula One, who's never done anything before in Formula One, who you might see up on the podium or maybe even surprise win a race this year, it would be Isaac Hadjar. Other than that,
Isaac
I don't think you're
Hatcher.
going to see. Other than that, I don't think you're going to see anybody new who ain't already won. So, and Kimi
Okay.
Antonelli, the Mercedes number 2 is possible if the Mercedes turns out to be a dominant car, and if George Russell has a bad day. Antonelli may pull out a win, but in terms of I would, my guess would be Hadger.
Okay.
That would be, if you're going to pick one first time winner, that would be my guess right there.
Words of wisdom from the Kornerman. So
Or a
we're gonna
complete
take a
guess.
quick break. I'm gonna make a couple adjustments. We'll be back momentarily. All right, folks, welcome back to the Foxhole. As always, when we have the corner man in the Foxhole, we just get real and we have a lot of fun. And this has been no different. So we've talked NASCAR already. We've talked Formula One. Now let's talk about the Indy circuit. And like the last segment, I'm going to start up with a softball. And so the conversation, I don't know how I frame this. I call it the Fox conundrum. Because I know last year when they, came aboard and there was like all kinds of pom poms. What I'm hearing from everybody I know, which is a small group of folks that know a thing about the Indy circuit, is that Fox is screwing the pooch with this horrible quality as far as the production, and it's almost unwatchable, is what people are saying. I can't say I've watched enough of it to qualify that, but I do remember Indy last year being a total cluster. You know what?
Well, the one thing you can say about racing fans in general and IndyCar fans specifically is they love to complain. Um,
Yes, they do.
the,
The
the
sports fans in
Indy,
general.
I mean, I have my own issues about the Fox IndyCar coverage, but it mostly my biggest issue is their lead commentator is just unlistenable. And he's just unlistenable. I mean, he screaming and screeching and trying to sound like Edgar Allan Poe with every thing. Just you know, get over it. I mean, I just he's
Mm,
he's unlistenable. Some people like, the drama that he has, but it's just like, it's lap 16, he's, and it's tremendous. Shut up. I mean, I just like, he's unlistenable. I can't listen to him. People complain about all the commercials, but apparently they haven't caught on to the fact you start watching about a half hour later and just DVR it, and fast forward. That's what I do.
okay.
I don't watch anything live. I don't watch any race live. It's all I mean, rare is the time. I won't say any because I don't want to speak in absolutes, but I DVR it. Oh, it starts at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock or whatever. Okay, I'll start watching at 1 o'clock. It's not like, oh my God, I have to be there at 11 to watch it live. I mean, no, I'll watch a little bit later, and I zip right over the commercials. Guess what? There aren't any commercials when you watch it on the DVR. So I have a hard time, with people complaining about the commercials because I think most people have a DVR, so that's all you need to do. Um,
The quality of the
you
feed
know,
is what
the
I
the
find
the
more troublesome.
they have different graphics and they're trying, they have a good, camera view from, helmet cam type thing.
Okay.
Um, some people prefer their graphics on the side, some prefer them on the bottom, and I found that it really doesn't matter what a broadcaster is going to do. Some people aren't going to like it and some people are. I've never seen a broadcaster, a network that's had a racing schedule that hasn't had people criticizing it and had people not criticizing it. There are things about every single broadcast that I like, and there's things about every single broadcast that I don't like. And the ones things that I don't like, I can manage to some extent. But the thing with this commentator is that's kind of troubling because I'm almost at the point where I want to mute it, and I want to mute it because I want to hear the engines and I want to hear, some of the things they have to say,
Fair enough.
but I don't want to hear this. He's a great. Don't get me wrong. He's a great pit road reporter for Formula One. He was a great features guy. He's great doing whatever he's doing. But as a lead play-by-play commentator, he's ill suited for what he's doing. That's the only complaint I have about the
Okay.
broadcast. Yeah.
That's interesting because, and you really have crystallized what, I'm always complaining about on my different platforms in terms of the peanut galleries, as I call them. And if they're not bitching about something or they don't have sand in their britches, they're just not really happy and they got to find
Exactly.
something to really bitch and moan about.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's the truth, And once you realize and recognize that, then it's easy to, um, because the truth of the matter is there is not one darn thing that I'm going to do about telecast. How am
Mhm.
I going to? There's nothing I can do to change what's on it, So I can either get all excited about watching my favorite sport, so I can sit there and gripe about the telecast, or I can get all excited about watching the sport and watch the sport and excited and enjoy it and like it. And there are some aspects of how I'm consuming it that are better than others, but I'm there to watch the sport and be excited about it. I mean,
Okay.
it's not about the telecast. You know, frankly, I'd be happy if they did the old, throw the game on without the broadcasters. I could deal with that. Just give
No,
me
I
the
like
ambient
the
noise,
announcerless,
as long as
telecast or simulcast. Sure.
you keep the rolling graphics going about what's going on, and maybe give me some ambient sound from from pit road and from in car audio every once in a while. I don't, that's fine. I mean,
Well,
it's not about the broadcast. It's about the
what's
sport, the game.
fascinating. Okay. Why I asked the question, because there's obviously a lot of scuttlebutt about it.
Yeah.
And why I was so curious because last year in Indy, there was a lot of problems, where the broadcast was really bad. I don't know if you remember it or not, but there was it's really glitchy all over the place, in terms of dropping frames and the audio not really matching up and things like that. But listening to you, that seems like that's more of an anomaly from that telecast as that being the whole thing. Because otherwise, you'd probably be irritated. I'm guessing this is more of people just, like I said, bitching the bitch as opposed to it being, you know, a terrible cluster like that was.
I got a picture in my office. I printed it out, 8.5 by 11, up on my office wall, and it's got this yellow DHL number 10 parked in front of this yard of bricks, and Alex Pillow leaping off in midair, laying out, arms outstretched, leaping off his car. You know what I remember about the Indy 500 last year? I remember Alex Pillow winning that race. I couldn't give 5 rips less about all the. And you're absolutely right. The broadcast last year sucked. It was terrible. It wasn't that good. There was all kinds of bad things. You know what I remember about that race last year? I remember Alex Pillow, the world's second greatest driver, winning that race, kicking butt as he went, and shredded the IndyCar series last year. Dominant. I just that sheer dominance of that guy. That's what I remember.
Okay, perfect segue. That's my next question. Can Alex four-peat? And what would that
Sure.
achievement be in the grand scheme of things? You being a historian of all of this as well, on top of everything else you bring to the table.
Can he? Yeah, absolutely. Whether he will or not, remains to be seen. But can he?
Totally.
Certainly. Um, where would it rank? In It would certainly go up there with Jimmy Johnson's run for sure, of winning 5 in a row. Um, I in terms of titles, and I can't think of anybody in any sport that tops Johnson's run, other than the Yankees back in Bang Yankees and the Celtics. But that was back in the 6 team era or 8 team era, and then that's it. That's
And
not
still,
not
which I
yeah
still
yeah.
say is
It's
legit.
it's
I'll
it's
argue
still
till I'm blue in the
absolutely.
face.
It's certainly legit. It's legit. Yeah, they're certainly legit. But in terms of statistically difficult, it wasn't
Right,
as
there's a degree of
statistically difficult.
difficulty.
Yeah, the degree of exactly, and when I weigh, achievements like that, the historical, I want to weigh more heavily the degree of difficulty. How hard was it?
Yeah, that's
First,
fair.
and although again, it's still very subjective. That being said, there's no in particular auto racing, run. Dale Earnhardt had a good run. He had what 5 titles in 7 years, something like that, or 4 titles, whatever it was. Um, he had
Very
a good run.
competitive.
Gordon had a good 4 or 5 year run. But in IndyCar, I don't know. He's just he's just tremendous. I don't think
He
anything.
really
Can't
is.
think of anything in IndyCar that can rival what the type of dominance that he's been on. 8 wins last year in 17 races.
Oh, sure.
He's won. He's had 20 wins in 100 starts. And remember, his first 15 or so starts were driving for Dale Coyne. So he really has 20 wins in his last 80 starts or so, 85 starts. He's just
Well, it's
dominant. He's just
fascinating, right? Because, um, you know, say what you will about Fox, but I give them credit, like in their daytime shows, whether it's Colin or Nick Wright and the guys on First Things First, even though they don't know what the hell they're talking about. But like First Things First, giving 2 hours of the show and being on site and having Alex and guys like come on, and then actually getting to see who these guys are as a casual, as opposed to right, seeing them comment after a race. And I thought when the two they talked to him at the end of last year, at the beginning of the season, and I'm like, man, this guy is not only a great fucking pardon my language, a great representation of the sport, but he's a down to earth cool guy. I'm just like going,
oh
what?
yeah, yeah.
So
Well, he was when he was in his second year, he became a fan of Marshall. Not a fan, but he was part of the Marshall Pruitt is an IndyCar reporter.
Mhm.
And Marshall had a podcast that he was doing, or he actually still does. And I worked for Marshall's podcast at the time in
You
21.
did?
Yeah, I did did a show composition for him. He would do his call for his questions on his various social media platforms, and I would compile them all and put them in the order that he would for him to ask. And basically
Well,
set up a show
shiggity
for him.
bag. Learn something
And
all the time. Cool.
so that and it turned out that year that Alex was they've discovered he was a fan. He listened to Marshall's podcast, and so he was he became Marshall had there's this little group like a listener group that the fan group of Marshall's, and Alex was kind of part of that. And it was, of course, he won the champion, ended up winning the championship, and he was Mr. Big after that. So was on to bigger and better things. But yeah, he
Fair enough.
but he's very, other than making a couple really bad business decisions, in terms of driving, the guy is sublime. I mean, he's the best there is, no question, in IndyCar for sure.
Okay. I like that. And I feel that, like I said, every time he comes on, first things first, I'm just like, man, that, what a treat it is for that circuit to have, such a cool ass champion. Let me ask you this real quick though. And one of the storylines I'm gathering as far as the indie circuit is concerned is Penske rising from the ashes like a phoenix. Can
Mhm.
you confirm that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They fell the last few years, and they had their trouble and they had their issues, but they're still Penske,
He's
and
still the chief.
and I still pick Joseph Newgarden to win the championship every year because I just until someone comes and proves me otherwise, which Alex Palou has done, but outside of Palou, I don't think there's anybody better than Newgarden, and he's and McLaughlin's the real deal. He's an absolute stud, and I'm not sold on David Malukas, but he's in Penske equipment, and he's not bad. He doesn't stink, and you just can see him winning races this year. So yeah, I'm they are definitely bad at 1, 2, or what 1, 3, and 6, or 1, 4, and 6, or something like that in the standings right now. So
I
they're
believe so.
again, it's early. It's only only a couple races in, but you can't tell who's going to be good, but you know who's going to be bad, and I don't think they're going to be bad. So
Quick sidebar here, real quick, before I ask the next question, because this is just me typically being a casual. I know
Mhm.
a few things, but I don't follow it closely enough. So, was it basically like a race extravaganza in Phoenix last weekend with NASCAR and Indy both being in
Yeah,
the great state of
it, it,
Arizona?
it was great, and Phoenix, that racetrack was originally that was an IndyCar track. It was made for
I do
IndyCar.
remember that.
They ran there for many years, and their last iteration there, they couldn't draw flies. I mean, it was sparse. It was same as Texas. I mean, they couldn't get anybody. The visuals for IndyCar on oval track racing over the last handful of decades has been bad because they haven't paired them up with there's been one or two series on track all weekend long. There's hardly anything going on track. There's hardly anything going on. There's nothing else to do. So the oval track racing for Indy really suffered. They're getting the products better for one thing. The racing is good, but they're doing things differently a little bit. They were willing IndyCar, and again, credit Fox. You talk about Fox and how Fox is working and what having Pelot and stuff on. Fox is a part owner of IndyCar now, so there's a
Yeah, they
reason
have
for
like
that.
a 33% stake, right? At
Yeah,
this
so they're
point.
they're financially invested in this, so they're going to definitely promote the heck out of it because they have a reason to. So that's great for IndyCar. We see a lot more promotion and cross
Fully
promotion.
concur.
Yeah, and you've the more eyeballs that are on them, the better.
No doubt, no doubt. Let me ask you this one then. Let's, like I asked during the NASCAR, we have to have a sentimental question. um, any chance of Scott Dixon getting title number 7? And if he did, what would that mean from a historical significance point of view?
Well, he's yes. The answer to that is yes. There's a chance. I think the chances are slimming. You know, and they're pretty slim.
Okay.
What happened? Well, he's 13th in points right now, so he's certainly, mathematically he's not out of it. I mean, it's very early, and he could do the types of things that he could. The problem really is the IndyCar field is so deep. I mean, the top, you can, really have an excellent season, run strong, do good things, threaten, maybe win a race or two, have score some podiums, do all right, and finish ninth. I mean, you've got three Penske's, you got a couple solid Ganassi's, you got a couple solid McLarens, you got throw a couple more guys in there, and you're gonna, if you finish top 10 in the IndyCar series, you're doing good. Dixon doesn't run up front enough. I mean, in order to win the championship now, it's not good enough anymore to finish eighth every race. Average eighth or seventh. Look at Pillow. You got to do fourth, third. I mean, you've got to be up at the tip of the spear. And Dixon hasn't shown the raw pace, and he hasn't shown um, basically the pace to be up front and to win races. He's still doing amazing things strategically. What happened to him in St. Pete was a travesty. He finished last, and what people failed to see was when he came out of the pits, when he zoomed out of the pits, and I even said it, oh, good, Dixon's right on perfect strategy now, and boom, his tire fell off because they didn't bolt his tire on. They
Oh no.
did the exact same thing as St. Pete that Pillow did. Pillow went and he ran along and overcut, came out in front and had the lead and won the race. Dixon was well further back than Pillow was, but he pitted real early, but then he ran along and he overcut and he came out in fifth. He was running fifth in terms of where everybody was and who had picked. He would have been fifth, and he was threatening. He had another solid Dixon top 5 to start. He ran seventh in Phoenix, so he ran pretty good there. But the problem for Dixon is he went in the pits and they didn't bolt his tire on, and he came out of the pits and his tire fell off, and that was it. So he's still got it. He's still got the racecraft. He's still, the team is still solid. Mike Hull still calls a great race. They can challenge. They may win a race or two. I mean, it would be what, 21, 22 years in a row if he's won a race, if he wins another race this year.
Which is
You know,
absolutely
second
pure
all time
insanity.
in race wins. I mean, he's it's just he's got to show a little more. The champion this year is going to have to show it. It's going to have to be fast. It's going to have to be challenging to win. It's going to have to win races, win podiums. It's going to take several wins this year to win the championship. And then whether Dixon can do that or not, I'm not sure.
Okay.
If I was a betting man, I would tend to bet against it, but I'd never bet against Scott Dixon though.
Okay, I like that. Okay, so as we like to keep asking, when it comes to this circuit, which people don't know enough about, and that's a damn shame, what other storylines besides, the obvious ones I'm kind of pointed out, like, hey, this is a casual that knows a few things, but what else out there that we might get intrigued by as this season moves forward?
Well, there are two new circuits on. I mean, you
Two
talked
new
about the
circuits.
Indy going back to Phoenix. Just IndyCar went back to Phoenix, and they had the joint weekend with NASCAR, and they got more eyeballs on them. But they're going to two brand new tracks this year. They're
Oh,
brand new
okay,
this
gotcha.
weekend. I'm not sure when this will be coming on, but but I know it's coming up. Is they're racing in Arlington, the around the stadium there. They're this a new street race. They're racing in Washington D.C. this year. I'm not even gonna even touch the whole political thing. If anybody
Yeah,
wants
yeah,
to cry
I
about the
was
political,
exactly.
you can just stuff it because it's another race. They're racing in we're old enough to remember the bicentennial and how big of a celebration that was.
Indeed,
Well,
indeed,
here it is,
indeed.
250 years now, and you know what? they picked IndyCar to stick IndyCar in Washington D.C. or in the National Mall to run a race, man. And it's great. It's like a pretty basic track around the mall, kind of a short track, but you know what they're going to run, and that's going to be fabulous. And that's just got a lot of juice to it, if you ask me.
Oh, no
Um,
doubt.
yeah, another one storyline to follow this year, and he's after two races, he is dead last. Not entirely his fault, but Mick Schumacher, the son of Michael Schumacher, the seven-time Formula One champion, is a rookie for the Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan team. He's running, he ran several years in Formula One. He's a Formula Two and Formula Three champion, so he has chops. He's a legitimate
Yes, I
driver.
can agree to the table.
Um, he brought his sponsorship packet to the Ray Hall team, and promptly went out and got cleaned out in turn four of the first lap of the first race by Stingray Robb. But so he finished last in that race, or next to last, and I don't know what. Yeah, he was way back, and he actually qualified pretty well for the Phoenix race. He had some issues, uh, electronics issues or mechanical issues that hurt his finish, but so he's showing a little bit of speed. IndyCar, the IndyCar is way different than the Formula One car. I mean, they look relatively similar. They're extraordinarily dissimilar vehicles. So you can't just expect somebody to jump right into to an IndyCar from Formula One and shine right away. Also, the Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan car is very hit and miss. They're either pretty good or they're absolutely terrible, and they're usually absolutely terrible the last few years. So they did happen to be pretty good in Phoenix, though, which their oval program has been their biggest problem. Their oval track program has been just
Oh, this is so fascinating.
Graham Rahal missed the Indy 500 a couple of years ago. He didn't qualify. Their cars have been basically the slowest team at the last couple of Indy 500s. Their oval track program. So to see Graham Rahal actually qualify up near the front and run pretty halfway decent. See Mick Schumacher actually, run top 10 for a while. Is a big improvement. So I think watching Schumacher's and the Schumacher name will bring some Formula One type media attention, and
Oh, no doubt. Eyeballs
so
for sure.
yeah, that's kind of a story. I mean, Roman Grosjean is back in IndyCar this year. Roman Grosjean, the Phoenix, is took 1 year away from IndyCar and is back this year with Dale Coyne Racing, where he ran his first IndyCar season. He's always entertaining. He's very colorful. I wouldn't surprise me to see him win a race, like on a road course or something in the Coyne car, because like Dale Coyne's cars aren't junk. And they've won some races in the past, and you get a good street circuit driver and at the right street circuit, and for Dale Coyne, they can win a race. So Grosjean hasn't won a race since I think he was a junior go-karter was the last time he won, but I mean he hasn't actually won a professional race. But he's really interesting, and
Okay.
he's a character, very charismatic. So him being back in IndyCar is good. And you know what? I'm gonna throw out the name Christian Rasmussen for you.
Christian Rasmussen. And why should we be intrigued with this
Christian
name?
Rasmussen. Well, he won a race last year, and he should have won at Phoenix. But the thing about Rasmussen is he drives for ECR, Head Carpenter Racing. He is an absolute dervish on ovals, short ovals in particular. Watching racing and watching, if you just see him, you're watching him go around. You just watch him going around. It just looks like they're just driving around, and there's not a whole lot to it. Anybody can mash the accelerator and drive down a straight line and do that. What separates people is how you make basically a left turn, in what you would, slow down to, 25 miles an hour or so on the street to make, but still manage to do it at 140 miles an hour, 145 miles an hour. And the guy who can do that at 2 or 3 miles an hour faster than the other guy can really stand out. And Rasmussen has either a bravery or a complete lack of conscience about him when it comes to short oval track
Ooh,
racing. That that
spicy.
that 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 he puts his car and play. He's like the Carson Hocevar of IndyCar racing, but you can't make contact in IndyCar. That's the thing. And he got a little too aggressive, trying to pass Will Power for the lead late in the Phoenix race. Made contact, cost him a top finish. I think he finished fifth, fourth or fifth, and should have won. I mean, he was the fastest car. He just drove past everybody. You just get up to him, and other guys will be they'll be working around, and he'll get up there and he'll drive that sucker right up there, and he'll sling it right around the outside. It's very very interesting to watch. So he's very brave. Has the potential to make really good television, really good theater. Also has the potential, to maybe have some, really spectacular crashes, but you never know. But he's a talent. He's a young talent. He's a race winner already, and it makes good TV. If you want to watch oval track racing, is what made IndyCar racing.
True.
IndyCar racing is great, on road courses and street circuits, and the Long Beach Grand Prix is an iconic event, and it's
Very
fabulous, and
iconic.
their skill is tremendous, and it's all that. It's about the speed, man. It's about the flat out speed, and as much fun as I've had at these other events, nothing will ever rival um, at the now late California Speedway of watching these guys fly by at 225 miles an hour, lap after lap after lap, and they fly, and they don't go quite that fast on smaller ovals, but the beauty of these cars, and when you actually go to a race and watch them go that fast, and you see, and you appreciate guys like Christian Rasmussen, who then you go back and watch it on TV and you go, how the heck did he have the balls to do that? How did he sling that thing around the outside of that curve like that? Because especially once you watch it live, and you can't do that. You just can't do things like that, but he does.
Okay.
And yeah.
So you dropped some good nuggets. Let me just take a quick second, and then we will do some parting shots and like quick tapes and get you out of here and and give you your night back. But I'll be back in less than 90 seconds. Okay, so we're gonna get to the parting shots and maybe salty takes, but this has gone really well. So, and you've enlightened myself, and I'm sure the folks who have been tuning in, and we thank you, folks. Always like and subscribe the YouTube channel. We need the engagement. Blah blah blah. You'll see it down here after I do the editing. Where to look at. Check out Fox. Try to get a Foxhole. Be dropping new content tomorrow there as well. But let's get to some rapid takes here. I always ask you about this every year. What about the ladies? When are we going to see a breakthrough there with the ladies?
Well, we got on Jade Adavisian on the West Coast running the lower level stock car series. Uh, um, there are, the Arca Menard series, and dang it, you got me on this one, but her name is escaping me. But there's a couple good young stock car ladies. But I'd say the one I'm would be most Isabella Robusto is her name. She drives
Okay.
in the Arca Menard series. She's come close to winning a few races. Jade Adavisian drives an Arca Menards West series. The Arca
Mm-hmm.
Menards series is like your rookie league is like your rookie league, and then you have your West Arca Menards West and your Arca Menards East, and those are like the junior rookie leagues that sort of feed into the rookie league, as it were. So, and they sometimes run joint events where it'll be a joint Arca Menards series and Arca Menards West race. That's what they had in Phoenix. So you'll get drivers from both series. Um, long story short, Jade Adavesians runs on the Arca Menards West Series, and she's a winner.
Okay.
And Isabella Robusto runs on the Arca Menards Series. She hasn't won on the Arca Menards Series, but she's come close. She's very competitive. There aren't, there's no Danica Patricks out there this year. There's
Chris, you
no
just beat me to my next question.
there,
And I know we're
there's
just
there's no Haley Deegan. Haley
okay.
Deegan is all the she's back. I mean, it's exciting to say that Isabella Robusto has been running back on the is running up there. It's not exciting to say Haley Deegan's been is back running there because she was up, running in the
On the cusp.
NASCAR national circuits, and she washed out. She tried to run a season in the Indy Next series or Indy Lights, the old Indy Lights series, and we knew that wasn't going to go anywhere, and it didn't. And so she's back running on the West Coast again, and she's a halfway decent, small time driver, but she's not a
Okay.
national, you know. There's nobody in the IndyCar pipeline really right now
So
that's
let
looking
me
good.
circle back to Danica. And I know we try to in the Foxhole keep things neutral when it comes to politics. But were you surprised that Danica has been pulled from F1? And it seems like all of our broadcasting stuff, but a lot of people think it's because of her, flamboyantness as far as being a MAGA.
You know, maybe it is,
That's what I say.
and maybe it's not. Um,
Right. Because I've heard that some of the foreign
she's still,
audiences think she's kind of
you know,
light in the analysis. And it's like, I don't care about her politics. I just don't think she brought anything to the table. It seems like a lot of the Brits, were critical of
I
her.
I go back to my comments from earlier about the broadcast, and while the personalities that are talking to you as you're consuming the telecast, whether it's during the pit sequence or pre-race or whatever, while they can enhance the experience to some degree, they're more than likely to detract from it. With that as my basic philosophy about the broadcasters, I couldn't care less. I
Okay.
just, it's. I turn on the Super Bowl as they're putting the ball on the tee, and I turn it off as they blow the whistle for halftime, and I turn it that type of thing. It's. I don't care about the broadcasters. People can be, I like to talk about them for sure, but they don't ruin the experience for me. They may detract from it to some degree, but if I'm going to let the broadcasters take away from my enjoyment of this game that I'm enjoying, this contest, this athletic endeavor that I've been watching, that I've been loving for 60 years, I need to find something else to do,
Well,
because
it's like it's so funny you say that because I was joking with my friend, and because he was commenting on that, as far as Danica being put on the sideline, and I said, well, I think it's more fascinating that her and Nicole Briscoe were actually high school cheerleaders together way back.
I didn't know that. Wow, that's a pretty good one. Yeah, she's still hot. So
Oh,
that's my
right.
take on Danica.
Yeah, you're right. I just think it's so funny that that they were cheerleaders together, and Danica's kind of a driver, and Nicole Mansky married into the Briscoe family. I'm just like,
Mhm.
yeah, how did that come about? Okay, so we'll move away from the ladies, and we'll kind of wind it down with this. And you've already kind of spoken to this, but I guess I want to dig a little bit deeper in terms of the lesser circuits and in terms of folks that maybe can find something cool that they had no idea was out there, and maybe how can they watch it even.
Uh, well, I always say, if you want to experience auto racing, if you want to get involved in race, or not get involved, but if you want to see it and enjoy it and really, feel it, go out to your local short tracks. you know, Go out, and when they open up the pits afterwards, for you to go down there, don't run out as soon as the thing's over, go down there. So, at your local short tracks, you go down there and they're the mechanics, the local shops. I work with like three guys who are racers. They work with me, they're some of them are facilities maintenance guys, other ones, the water systems operators. And you know what they do on the weekends? They go out and they race the short tracks, and then just regular guys. You go down and talk to them. You could, sometimes they'll even let you sit in the car. You smell the smells of how this car smell, and
Hell yeah.
get real close. Feel the dirt clods flying off of the wheels as they're whizzing through turn four, and the dirt clods are flying. You know, um, get up close. Start right there. If I'm John Q. Public, or even if I'm a sports fan but not a racing fan, I'm like, hey, let's racing. Let me check it out. Start out and go to your local short track, because I guarantee you, and I won't guarantee you, but I would be pretty sure that almost any local short track you go to, you're going to do something. That won't be your first. That won't be your last stop.
Oh,
You'll
sure.
check something else out. You might,
I think local. It's so funny you say that, right? Because
whether you go to a race or whether now you go tune in, there's going to be a step two. If you just decide you're going to turn on the TV and watch some sort of race, who knows what network you'll catch. You might catch one of those stinky broadcasts where there's commercials every 5 minutes, and you don't, and you'll never go back. But if you go to the race at your local short track, you're going to go back. You're going to check something else out
yeah,
again. It's going to whet your
absolutely.
curiosity.
Well, I was gonna say it's so funny you say that because locally, as far as where you and I grew up, it's the that one, that outward piece that Wyatt Bowman guy runs. But the what's her face, Linda Wilhite is always posting pictures, of her, because her dad, Vern, was the
Mhm.
one of the, I want to say scions of local racing in Merced
Mhm.
County. And I always crack up at, the folks who chime in and talk about how that was such a pivotal part of them growing up. And then,
Mhm.
what a great experience it was. I mean, I probably took for granted, but I know others that was like the cool thing. I was like
Mhm.
Ted Stoffel, who was like really dominant when we
Headstone.
were.
There you go. Yep. Yep. Mhm. I one of my coworkers is an IMCA national champion, Johnny Baptista, out of Witten.
Really?
He won the national championship in 2001, 2002. He was racing the year that I covered Merced Speedway in 2000. He was racing there. Fast, yeah, guy's fast. And you know what? He's my coworker now. He's just a regular
That's
dude. He's funny
wild.
as heck. Yeah, and he could drive. The guy can drive. There's the world is littered with great race car drivers who you'll never see. I mean, if you can hoop or whatever game, you're going to end up, especially nowadays, you'll get noticed. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
halfway decent 13-year-old, you're going to get a contract and make $100,000
As
when you're
we talked
16.
about
So
with
if you
Hart,
so if you can halfway decent hoop, you're going to get, you're
Harvick's
getting
did.
noticed.
So
It
yeah,
ain't that way. It's not that way for racing. I mean, if you don't have money or you don't have somebody to back you, you're not going anywhere. That's just the bottom
that,
line. And the
that's
world
kind
is
of a lot
littered.
of sports are
That
now pay per play.
for every Scott Dixon you hear about who had somebody who give him the money and they've been paying back a portion of his winnings for the last 25 years to get there, you got a David Impringham who you've never heard of, who is probably just as good. So you can't, you got to have that cash to get there. And there's a lot of people out there, a lot of guys who you might see at your local short track who probably have the types of skills that some of those guys you watch on TV have.
Okay, that's a perfect question. I don't know why I pulled this out of my rear, but so way back in the day, living in A Town and having friends that are racing aficionados, they used to always talk about the world of outlaws. Do the Kinsers and Swindells still dominate the world of outlaws, or do you know?
Well, there's Sammy Swindell still runs.
Okay.
Mark Kinzer was big in it for a long time. Yeah,
And
the
he knows this. I love it.
dirt track racing is really it's splintered a lot. There's a couple different series now, and and Kyle, actually, you know what, the best dirt if you ask me, the best dirt track racer out there is also the best pavement racer for stock cars, Kyle Larson. But which might be why he's the best. I'll tell you what, I watched Kyle Larson run dirt car here at Merced, and
Did
gosh,
you really now?
oh yeah, he was here a couple of years ago,
For
and
what kind of event?
it was a World Outlaws. It was
Okay.
or whatever. Yeah. And it was in November. It was after the end of the Cup Series. It was 3 years ago maybe. And Chase Elliott was here, and Santino Ferrucci, the IndyCar driver, was here. And yeah, Larson was driving two different classes that night, and he set the track record in qualifying. And you watch the way the car control that he has, it's a little different from everybody else, because the cars, the dirt track cars, and they're going through the dirt, they're anything but smooth. I mean, you watch the Cup Series cars, and they look like they're just smoothly driving around a circle. But these dirt cars are back and forth, back and forth. The wheels are, they're working that thing around those turns. And Larson's just smooth. He's just smooth. I mean, the
Better.
attitude of his car is just smooth. I mean, his car is just smooth. I mean, he's just, he's been doing this
Yeah.
since he was, 4 years old, and that's all he does. He runs, literally 100 races a year, 100 nights a year somewhere. He lives on the road, runs the dirt, loves the dirt. Would probably rather run in the dirt. And when he got suspended from NASCAR, he went and ran, every night, and won like 5,000 races that year. I mean, it was an amazing year. So,
And this is why, for all you Jordanaires out there, cool your heels. There's too many Kyle Larsons and too many other badass drivers out there that think,
yeah.
oh, well, everything Jordan touches, he wins. I'm like, well, what happened when he was the Bobcats owner? Oh, you don't want to talk about that. But now that he won 3 races in a row, everything Jordan touches, he wins. And I'm like, no, I think Kyle Larson and Joey Logano and on have a few things to say about this.
For sure, especially this year.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, I think we've covered an incredible amount of ground, and this is always a pleasure. I mean, obviously, just getting to talk to you, and actually now getting to see your face again. It's been far too long.
Face made for radio. That's me, man. I'm telling you.
Absolutely, and likewise, I'm just like a mess over here. Yeah, it's obviously we're gonna do this again. I can't, thank you enough for not only being a friend, going back to being in Barry Reese's class, speech class, when I first actually became friends with you for a
Yeah,
day.
that was the day, man. I'm telling you. I don't know how he made it through that one, but
Oh, no doubt. Especially with the mean Mormon girls that were in that class, but whole other story. But anyhow, take care, be well.
right, kid.
Thank you. Massive love from the Foxhole for us coming and being a part of the experience with me again and again, and dropping incredible nuggets of wisdom. Can't thank you
Always a
enough.
pleasure. Always a pleasure, Ken. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I'm sure we will talk soon, and I'll be actually, because every time that we do have this conversation, I'm like, oh, I gotta pay attention more. You'll probably be seeing more, IMs from me, like going, what do you mean about that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, you have yourself a wonderful evening, and we will talk to you soon.
All right. Peace.
Okay. Peace.
All right, man.
Okay. See you soon. All right. That was a lot of fun. Always a pleasure when we get to chat with the Kornerman. We'll do it again. Maybe this season we'll actually follow up, get a little trimmers going, and get a short conversation to get some updates on what we discussed, because we definitely covered a lot of ground. As always, keep an eye out for content. I just released episode 305 Into the Wild about an hour ago as far as Fox trading in a Foxhole is concerned. This AftershoX episode is coming out sometime Saturday, so there'll probably be more content Tuesday or Wednesday. As always, keep it tight, keep it clean, keep it real. Stay safe, stay sane, avoid the bracelets, enjoy lots of adult beverages and good food and good peeps, and we'll see you soon. Peace, y'all.